Would you like to know how to not just organize your data, but actually do things within Salesforce, like reach out to your candidates and clients? That's what we're going to talk about today. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Salesforce for Recruiters. I'm your host, as always, Brad Owens, and I was just like you. I was a recruiter for well over a decade, using various pieces of technology that never really fit what I wish they could do for me. And then I saw Salesforce, and I went, where has this been all my life? So since then, I've been dedicating my career to helping both Salesforce and recruiters understand how this platform can be used for them. And in doing so, I'm a part of Assemble. Now, Assemble has a branch of consulting called Assemble Consulting. Imagine that. And I wanted to showcase some of the talent that we have over there at Assemble Consulting. And I got a question recently about Marketing Cloud, about account engagement, about Pardot, about all these different things that you could call this potential tool. And I went, I bet we have an expert on that. So I reached out to our senior solution architect, Lillie Beiting. She's here for us. Lillie, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So I say we found the right person. Lillie, why did I find the right person? Go ahead and brag a little bit.
I've written a lot on Pardot, and I know it's called Marketing Cloud Engagement, and I'll try to call it Marketing Cloud Engagement, but it's still Pardot from the block for me. So Pardot was my bread and butter for a very long time. I was actually recognized by Pardot as one of their 30 marketers to watch. I was a Dreamforce speaker on them, and that actually was really the gateway, I guess, to my entire Salesforce career and experience. Because I actually started off in digital marketing well before I went into Salesforce management and into architecture. And kind of the natural pathway over there was like, because they're so interconnected to each other, if your Salesforce sucks, your marketing sucks. So that's really kind of how I made that transition. But for a very long time, Marketing Cloud and Pardot was all I did.
I love it. See, I told you we found the right person. And this is just a little tiny example of the talent that exists inside Assemble Consulting. Like, we're just developing this group of amazing individuals. So let's get everyone grounded and help them understand what it is we're talking about here. So when you think about Salesforce, when you start hearing Marketing Cloud and Pardot, and it's like, wait, how are any of these things even related? Can you give us some, just a little bit of an understanding there?
Yes, so they were all acquisitions, which is why they seem a little bit off and a little different. At one point, all of the Marketing Cloud stuff was its own different products. And I guess now Pardot, as Marketing Cloud Engagement, is technically considered Marketing Cloud as well. But really what it has been is sort of several years of Salesforce buying different things, like Social Studio, which I think used to be Radian 6 at one point. Exact Target was the original Marketing Cloud. Pardot, still Pardot. So part of the reason you see all these different names is while Salesforce has definitely improved them over the years and definitely honed them to work really well with Salesforce, these were originally different things. So I don't blame you for being confused. Salesforce also has a very bad habit of relabeling things and renaming stuff. So I can totally see why people kind of struggle with the differences between them all.
So we're not talking about things that live outside of all these different ecosystems, right? We're still talking about the one in the whole Salesforce
Correct.
Platform.
Yes. Like I said, as they bought them, they definitely engineered them to be really, really, really tightly integrated with Salesforce itself. So a lot of these programs before, and rather applications, I guess, before they were purchased would work with other software, but they were so strong with Salesforce especially that's kind of what led Salesforce to acquire them.
Right. So as you all, the listener, are paying attention to what we're talking about today, we're all trying to keep it in that Salesforce ecosystem. All of these things need to speak Salesforce together. So that's why we wanted to talk about this a little bit more, because one of the major use cases in recruiting land is getting in front of people, whether that's talent or clients or everything else. So these tools have the ability to do that. Now, when we're talking about all these different types of tools, Lillie, I'm hoping you can help us here. So when you think about Salesforce Marketing Cloud account engagement, where should, I guess, recruiting firms really start to understand what's right for them?
So I would say the primary difference between them is that Pardot, account engagement, whatever you want to call it, is really more of a B2B tool, and the family of Marketing Cloud tools are more B2C tools. And you're going to say, cool, we do both in recruiting. What's the difference, right? So I would say that Marketing Cloud itself is very piecemeal. There's so many different products that live inside of it. I mean, Social Studio lives inside of it, like personalization stuff lives inside of it. There's loyalty, there's advertising, there's all kinds of things. And then Pardot itself is really more focused on email engagement and sort of direct engagement. You can still do stuff like text and, call tracking, but you have to do them with third-party plugins. You also have to use third-party plugins in Marketing Cloud as well. But I would say kind of the primary difference between them is really like the depth that you're looking at and how you want people to engage. But a lot of the functionality is very similar. The other biggest difference, which I don't want Salesforce to get mad at me, but Pardot's a lot cheaper, like a lot cheaper. So if you're still sort of getting used to digital marketing as a whole, I would say start with Pardot, because the add-ons and the cost for a lot of what's going on in Marketing Cloud, if you're one of those big boy recruiting firms that's publicly traded, Marketing Cloud's probably the choice. But if you're a smaller boutique firm and you really just want that nice, clean, like depth of information, ability to run drips, ability to do personalized emails, either in mass or one-on-one, and the ability to plug in things like different text providers or different like webinars or stuff like that, I'd say start with Pardot.
So is there anything gigantic that they're going to be missing out on? I guess, is there any key functionality that they'll be like, okay, once I hit this point or need this, then it makes sense?
I would say when you start getting into like a true cross-platform kind of environment, so like let's say you were a commerce solution at some point, or you're one of those recruitment firms that has a lot of different arms, like maybe you have a consultancy, maybe you do have stuff you're selling publicly that's more commerce-oriented. It's really when you start getting into more of that like complex ecosystem that Marketing Cloud makes a lot more sense. So again, I sort of think of it in terms of, I always use the example of shoes because I like shoes, but if you are, someone who shops at Nordstrom for a while and you've ever gotten all those emails, you've gotten texts, or you've gotten like really timely, interesting things saying, hey, Lillie, I saw you really like those shoes. They're on sale. Guess what? Right? Like that's Marketing Cloud. And in fact, like you can kind of tell after you get used to looking at Marketing Cloud when you're getting Marketing Cloud specific blasts. But if you're more on that B2B side and you're more in that, Lillie and Brad have had a working relationship for many years, or maybe Lillie and Brad are trying to establish one, Pardot's really good for that more day-to-day B2B. We're working through Outlook, we're working through G Suites, and I want you to do things like attend webinars. I want you to do things like come to trade shows or open forums. That's really more Pardot's wheelhouse. But Pardot does have an API. People don't seem to know this, but you can plug more stuff into Pardot if you want to. It's just that Marketing Cloud has a lot of that in the front end already.
Yeah, I haven't seen the majority of customers that I've worked with. I haven't seen that need for Marketing Cloud yet. I mean, we can come up with scenarios that they could use it, but I haven't really seen it a lot because they're not selling. They're not selling people. So.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and no shade to Marketing Cloud. Marketing Cloud's awesome. It's just that it's kind of a sledgehammer when you need a butter knife.
Sure.
And again, you may be an organization that truly needs that. You might be one of those really, really big recruitment firms with a bajillion different branches that is at that level of complexity. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think for most recruitment firms that are a little bit smaller or more localized or more boutique, Pardot, Marketing Cloud engagement would get the job done for you.
You did mention a feature that I know a lot of people are going to ask about. So using these tools, there's the ability to track engagement. Normally at the very basics, we're thinking, who opened my email? Who did not? I mean, I would see that kind of tracking to be incredibly valuable for firms. What do you feel like is kind of the major takeaway for why that's important for them?
Oh, it is. It's life-changing. And, I've been doing this for so long that I'm kind of blasé about Salesforce features. Like there's a client I'm working with right now who validation rules have changed their life. And to me, as somebody who's been in Salesforce for a while, and if you don't know what that is, that's just a rule on the back end saying, hey, Brad, that's a number field. Don't you put text in that, right? So to me, these are very basic things, but to a lot of people who have never touched them before, it's revolutionary. And I feel that way very much about the engagement components that you can put inside Salesforce and make it easier for people to see what just went on. So we'll go back to that example of, let's say, Brad is my client and, the company in and of itself just did a nice blast to him. I can look in that little engagement component and see everything he did on properties we're able to touch with him. So I can see if he opened that email. I can see if he filled out a form. I can see all these wonderful things he just did. And then that way, when I pick up the phone and talk to him, I can have a much more tailored, valuable conversation with him. My advice that I always give is don't be a creep. Mm-hmm. So don't look at it and be like, hey, 45 seconds ago, I saw that you opened this email blast. How's it going? Did you like it? Don't go that far. But knowing that somebody has engaged in those specific actions and done those behaviors, I think allows you to have a much better conversation and really tailor what you're saying to what that person's interested in and what they're doing.
Sure. And I would agree with that. The interesting thing about the tools that we've had available to us as recruiters is they have historically been very good at put this gigantic group of people together and blast it out to all of these different people at the exact same time. It's okay, but I feel like there could be some more nuance here. There could be a little bit better application of the data that we've got to be able to help automate the right kinds of things, send the right kind of things at the right time to the right kind of person. So what kind of things have you seen people take advantage of there, and how can we kind of reduce the need to, once we get to that complexity, at least, to the right thing to the right person at the right time, reduce that from being so manual to be a bit more automated?
Yeah, no, this is the magic of both Marketing Cloud and Pardot, is that you can set all these lovely rules to just segment stuff for you, which is really nice. So if you're just getting started, I recommend not getting super crazy when you're building journeys and drips. I've seen people on LinkedIn, especially, there's so many Salesforce influencers who will show like this spaghetti of different actions and different wait time. And it's like, don't, stop. If it's that insane, you're probably doing a little bit too much. I always encourage people to sort of back up and talk about things before you start building things, which is, what are you actually trying to go after, Brad? Like, are we going on a geo hunt? Is there a certain geo of folks that we just want more business with? Do we want a re-engagement? For example, let's say we worked with you 2 years ago and you haven't done business with us in 2 years. Are we looking for people who we haven't reached out to in X period of time? I like to really sit with a business, if I'm building this, and figure out what they're looking for before I just hand them a bunch of data and tell them to go crazy, right?
Sure.
So especially for folks who are starting out, I usually recommend that you start with something kind of generic and small, right? And as you get more comfortable with these different solutions, you can get much more sophisticated in kind of your decision action. So I think the thing you just mentioned earlier is that one kind of spray and pray mentality of marketing. Always. Where you can get, again, a lot more segmented. So let's say you do have an event, but you want it to be different, like the email that they get to be different depending on their title, for example, or maybe it's different depending on the vertical that they're in, right? You can actually set all these nice little dynamic filters inside there so that Brad over in tech gets something different than Lillie over in medicine. So you can actually build these things sort of at the same time and still get this nice little personalized, tailored experience. And then when, again, you're more comfortable with what you're doing, you can add actions off of that. So if Lillie in medicine gets this email, and if she clicks ABC and she goes to this page, or she enters this form, then add her to this part of the step. So you can get more of that nice granularity and still keep it personal and still keep it relevant. And again, personalization relevance is what we're so used to. Think about a lot of these commerce giants who are so good at it. Sorry to keep going back to my big box stores that sell shoes, but like, again, have you ever been to one of those stores or been on one of their e-commerce sites? And the way that they engage with you afterwards is like so personalized, it's so specific. Even weeks later when they're telling you, oh, hey, I know you like those shoes, now they're half off. It's that level of personalization because you're way more likely to buy. You already showed a lot of these behaviors, like clicking on this thing, reading this far in an email, engaging with these specific buttons. You can essentially set these systems to keep following up with your end users in that fashion.
The example that I like to keep using for people is, think about, instead of where you heard Lillie talk about shoes or products or something like that, insert job. If you have some very specific types of key fields on a job, things like where it's located, what kind of skills they need. If you can start creating a profile of an individual who keeps clicking on the same types of jobs, not only can you kind of tailor your messaging to that specific type of user, but that user is going to feel like, oh man, not only do they not have this candidate black hole where I just apply and nothing happens, I'm getting engaged with constantly on stuff that's actually relevant to me. It helps people set themselves apart.
Absolutely. And again, that also, if you've got a marketing department that's getting used to this, that also gives your marketing department good ideas to start with, right? Because they can look at things that would be different areas for segmentation they might not have seen before when they were doing more of that spray and pray approach.
Yep. I really, really like that. So you mentioned this personalization stuff. What types of ways can people take advantage of the personalization power inside of these tools that may change based on what we've been talking about, those different types of demographics of these individuals? Yeah,
so there's a lot of ways to do this. So this is kind of Salesforce like 201, 301 that we're getting into. So I hope I'm not losing people as we kind of talk about this. But the main record that comes over into those is usually a contact or a lead record. So that's where the people live, right? So if Brad was one of my clients, I'd have a contact record for him. And it's usually within those sort of initial setups, it's just that record that comes over. But you may have associated things depending on the level of spend you've got, depending on, what you map over, where you can get other aspects of what Brad is connected to into Salesforce over. So typically I have people just start with the basics, right? Just stay with your people for the moment and look at what's on there, right? How have you set your Salesforce up to tell you everything you need to know about Brad when you go to his record? Where is Brad located? Do you have any kind of float over fields that are showing the last time that he purchased from you guys? Are you segmenting him based off what industry that he's in, based off what tier of client he might be, right? It's all of those sorts of things that you want to see when you're thinking through this of what data do I have right now that I can segment based off of? What do I know is going to be common data, right? So I use the example of segment quite a bit, right? Because one of the clients that I work with is very heavily focused on tech. And I know there's recruitment firms that very heavily focus on medicine, or they very heavily focus on education, or they manufacturing, whatever it is. If you're somebody who deals with a lot of that, being able to segment those things out and really gear your comms towards that can help. Now, there's a bunch of stuff in the back end of both Pardot and Marketing Cloud that allow you to really tailor what people are seeing based off personalization. So again, I'm sure you've gotten an email that says, hey, Brad, those shoes are on sale, right? That little field that says Brad, that's a little variable that you can kind of put into your content if you want. Same with some of the landing pages that you build on there. Same with some of the forms. So it's essentially reading that it's Brad who's looking at this and pulling his information in and changing what he sees based off that. And you can get really sophisticated with this. Again, I always recommend start simple before you get too wild, but you can go in and you can say, all right, based off XYZ, I want him to see this file, or I want to see him to see this image, or, I want to make sure that when I'm setting up a journey in the back end, that if he gets this image, then he gets this text message 3 days later, or whatever the case may be. So it really gets kind of as granular as you can possibly think. What I would recommend, though, is as you're thinking through these scenarios you want, work with your Salesforce admin, work with your Pardot admin or your Marketing Cloud admins to think through how to do these things, because they may need to make some configuration changes on the Salesforce side to get that information in a position where it can be moved over to one of these systems.
And I know we're starting to say things like admin and work with your admin. I understand that most of the recruiting firms out there aren't going to be at the level where you're ready for this kind of person.
Yeah.
There are consulting firms and consulting individuals out there that will help you. Look up Assemble Consulting, asymbl.com.
Shameless plug.
I have no problem with that. I know we're the best at what we do, so I'm going to go ahead and put it out there.
Hey, I'm not going to take food out of my mouth. So,
no. Well, you did mention something there that I think is really interesting, because most tools on the market, when we think about from a recruiting perspective at least, most tools out on the market don't really have these multi-channel capabilities. And when we're talking about channels, everybody, we're talking about email, texting, the web platform that you're using, the things that you show on certain forms or collection devices or whatever that might be. A lot of these tools don't have that. So when you think about trying to span across all of these multi-channels, like you were saying, it could get kind of intense pretty quickly. Do you have any tips for those people who they got excited about, oh my gosh, I can do all these different things?
Yeah. This one is so underrated, and every single place I've ever implemented it, it's so life-changing. Call tracking numbers. Buy call tracking numbers. They're super duper cheap. I'm a call rail girly myself, but there's many different places that provide call tracking. And whenever you're doing a marketing campaign, just set up a custom number that goes with it. And then anything that ports through that is measurable. Like, even if you're doing analog media, so let's say you're doing a mailer for whatever reason, you can actually use digital marketing to do that too. You can set up call tracking numbers, and you can set up trackable web links as well. So I'm sure you might have seen bit links all over the internet, those sort of bit.lys. You can set those up in Pardot like that. Now, you do have to buy a third party to do your call tracking numbers, but that is the most basic place to start, and it's like night and day in terms of what you're able to see, right? Because it's just basic areas of making sure you're sort of containing all the different places that people engage with you. And if you're new to digital marketing, it's still highly likely you put phone numbers out there at one point, or, you sent something out with a phone, like some kind of phone number in there, whether it's email, whether it's something print, like those are a very basic thing we've been conditioned to do since phones were invented, right? So that would, again, it's such a low-hanging fruit thing, and I've seen it just really revolutionize how people review their data and figure out where information is coming from, because especially in the B2B side of the world, people might not email. They might just pick up their cell phone and call you, right? So being able to see what's there or being able to open that email and tap that number and pick right up, like really makes life a lot easier for folks. And again, those are so basic, but they make such a change.
Yeah. And one of the things I keep hearing you mention is this reliance on all of this comes back to a person, an individual, a contact inside of Salesforce. A lot of the times when I see recruiting firms setting up their Salesforce instance, they immediately start to try and identify types of people and move them into their own kind of objects and their own kind of lanes so that clients only go here and candidates only go here and this applicant only goes there. A lot of what you're talking about comes back to just a contact. Do you see people getting into trouble with that?
Yes. So this is a fun little Salesforce fact for you. Do not duplicate the standard objects. So contact is like one of the most important objects there is, if you think about it, because that's where the person lives. And your CRM is all about your people. It rolls up to an account. A CRM is all about the entities you do business with. So right up there is going to be your account and your contact. So there's a lot of ways that you can segment those things and connect them to other stuff that's more complicated, but please make sure you keep the integrity of the account and the contact. Unless you're getting crazy and doing person accounts, that's a different matter entirely. We won't even get into that one yet. But again, you can segment with a concept called a record type. So if you have different kinds of contacts, let's say your clients are different than your candidates, or maybe you have clients that turn into candidates at some point, you can discern that these are different record types. So keep them in the same object so that these things can flow into other Salesforce solutions, not just marketing, by the way. There's all kinds of different Salesforce products. You really want the integrity of that to be present in, but you still have the ability to customize while staying on best practice. But it is actually against your Salesforce contract to duplicate the standard objects. Don't do that.
It's bad news.
Don't do that.
People do it.
It's crazy. Don't do it. I don't know why. Don't do it. No.
So one of the things that all of these engagements will lead to is so much data. You're going to have tons of data flowing through. Every time you send something out, every time someone engages, every time it comes back to this person and this person has this type of thing then added to their record. Like there's going to be so many different pieces of data that are going through this. One of the benefits of that is reporting, because all of this comes back to be reportable. So what kind of things do you feel like people should focus on? Because it's going to create a lot of noise. What if you were to cut through all of that and say, just let's focus on the basics here? What would the basics be for these types of data points that people should focus on?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to identify what you care about, right? Like, what are you actually trying to get people to do? And there's really no wrong answer to that question. Like, you very well might just want people to open your email. Your marketing practice might be new. You might just try to be getting folks in the gist of kind of, reading your newsletter or getting used to getting emails from you. I know some recruitment firms who are very new at that kind of passive marketing. It's fine for that to just be your open, right? Like just that open metric being what you care about. Nothing wrong with that. I encourage you, in fact, to kind of start there if you're new. But as time kind of moves on, you really want to sort of look at that attribution life cycle, right? Like what are the things that are actually making my client engage with me? So whether that's going to the point of, hey, I signed up to come to your webinar, or I signed up to come to your trade show event, or, I filled out this form saying, oh my gosh, yes, I do need 10 more folks who specialize in Java, or whatever the case may be. Be very intentional about what you're trying to measure and sort of design your system around that and specifically report on those things. Now, if you're a recruiter and you're inside Salesforce and you've got that engagement, I think looking at your book of business and looking at where your personal activities or even marketing activities done on your behalf kind of play in is a really great place for you to start, right? So I would always say, even though this isn't technically reporting, but it functions like it, if you're on your contacts record, take a look at that overall engagement component that's on there. See what's happened there and see what somebody tends to gravitate towards so you can have a more informed conversation.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. The interesting part of bringing this all back and seeing your success and seeing what is being sent out and when and to who, it's really interesting that all of these things can live within the same kind of CRM land, right? In the same kind of tools. And that leads to a lot better alignment in what you are doing. I'm sure you have some stories about how you've seen people that started out one way thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden went, oh my goodness, there's way better ways we can be doing it. Look at all these things that we missed. Anything that you've seen people do that helps them identify those quicker?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it comes to defining the metrics that you care about, right? And also being religious about actually checking your metrics. That's a big one. So if you are a marketer and you're the one who's running these blasts or you're the one who's setting these things up, like actually review the analytics. That sounds like such a basic thing to say, but I've definitely dealt with folks who like don't check, right? So when you're setting it up, have that kind of experimental mindset, have an A/B test mindset and see what sticks. And it might shock you what actually sticks. Like there's times when, I wasn't writing copy, but somebody else wrote copy and they'd give it to me and I'd be like, this will never resonate. And it'd be like the best performing thing there was. So again, check your bias a little. I'm certainly guilty of it, but make sure you are actually looking at the overall metrics for a campaign that you're running. If you are a recruiter, take a look at that component, see what's working, see what people are engaging with. I think, again, it sounds so simplistic, but like actually look at your reporting, pay attention to it, make reasonable conclusions from it, and try to either replicate that the next time or figure out what about that shouldn't be replicated next time.
Mm-hmm. Stop doing the bad things quickly.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. You don't want to be known as that person.
Or if you're doing naughties, so if you're not keeping your data clean, if you're not making sure that your email addresses have opted in to get emails from you, you can also get your email shut down too. So when I say make sure you're not, committing any naughties, that's also making sure that you're delivering to 90% or above of all the folks that you're emailing to. So again, keep the basic hygiene stuff going as well. That's not to be underrated.
Is there any way you've seen people use these tools to help with that?
Yeah. So I actually am a big fan of bounce checkers. So before you ever turn this stuff on, I recommend buying like a third-party bounce checker. They charge like per meal, so that's by thousand. If you're not familiar with that terminology, you can run all your email addresses into it and it runs a check for you to see if these email addresses still exist. So that's been really good to just kind of get that out of the way in the front for you before you start anything. But when you're actually running these things, it will take do not contacts out of your list for you, which is really nice. So when somebody opts out through that little kind of preference button, I'm sure we all clicked at some point, the systems automatically take them out for you. So you're at less of a risk of, spamming somebody that told you they didn't want to be talked to.
Or they should.
Well,
Yeah.
We can only lead a horse to water, all right?
Yeah. I'm with you. I love those ones that keep coming back in my inbox. Like, I told you. No.
I know, I'm the same way. And especially as somebody with a marketing background, I'm like, this is not legal. You stop that.
Yep. Gotta love those. All right. So we're talking about tools that recruiting firms have never even thought possible before. When someone's sitting there on the fence of, well, I have something that can mass email my candidates, they're missing the point because this does far more than that. When you feel like you're talking to these recruiting firms and trying to get them to understand the benefits of what this type of tool can really do for them and why it's critical for the staffing industry to start getting behind these types of things, what kind of benefits come to mind for you?
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's that informed conversation, right? It's having this nice, clean, one-stop shop of what has Lillie engaged with? What does Lillie seem to care about? And not just Lillie, right? What are people who have similar attributes to Lillie that we care about in our own world? What do they like, right? It's the almost instantaneous feedback in terms of what you're doing and how you're communicating. And it goes down so many different layers of the funnel. That's the nice part about it too. Like, it's not just marketing who benefits from this, right? It's the recruiters themselves if they are also sending either the personalized emails, which some folks can get set up. It sort of depends on your contract, or even what marketing is sending out, right? Because if you have a recruitment firm that is doing a lot of marketing on your behalf, it can be really nice to see, oh my gosh, like my client Brad just signed up for this trade show. I'm going to be at this trade show. Let me reach out to him and make sure I set an appointment with him. It's these sort of things that you can now instantaneously have served to you versus having to sit down with the marketing department, them going through the whole roster of who signed up for this trade show and you hoping one of your clients is there. It's sort of that instant information cleanly collated into one place that you can act on like that.
It will change the game for
it
recruiters.
Does. It very much does for folks who have picked it up in other industries that I've seen.
I love it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and giving us this kind of deep dive in this, because I couldn't have done this. So thank you for helping educate the audience on this.
You're welcome.
This is a great 101 if they wanted a 201 or more any suggestions of where they should look?
Yes. So I have a very good friend. Her name is Andrea Terrell. She is a badass. She has a blog called Circante. It used to be the spot for Pardot, but she turned this into a whole business. But she has really, really good kind of FYIs on what's going on with Pardot specifically, although they do Marketing Cloud as well. Salesforce Ben's always a good guy. And then like us, like we publish things about this too. I'm going to be doing some guest writing for some of our marketing stuff as well. I think there's a lot of different folks who are very, very interested in this field simply because it has controlled a lot of the modern digital experience, right? Like, again, I've been in it for so long. And when I get emails from different retailers, I'm like, oh, Marketing Cloud, HubSpot, Pardot, Marketing Cloud, MailChimp. Oh, okay. Marketing Cloud. Yeah. So, you do get used to it, and just in terms of people trying to understand, like, how this stuff works, even if you aren't specializing in it. But I would say Salesforce also has some really good webinars on it too. You've always got a very good, anyone who's using Salesforce, all they have to do is just call their AE and they will get someone who specializes in these. They'll go get a solution engineer to come help out. So there's a lot of different places you can look. And the basic Trailhead forums are good. Trailhead has a bunch of really good trainings on both Pardot and Marketing Cloud too. So there's a lot of resources out there on this stuff.
Yeah, and wherever you're watching this, I'll make sure to include some links around here, whether there's description or comments or wherever it is. I'll make sure you've got some links to go and dig in deep. But we would love to have a conversation with you about this. We love helping people get the most out of their technology that they're already paying for, or find some technology that they didn't even know existed and could change their world. So we love having these conversations.
I got another one for you too. I've also seen people not use their Marketing Cloud or their Pardot correctly. So if you need help figuring that part out, we're also quite good at that too.
Yep. We'll throw a plug one more time. So it's assemble.com, asymbl.com. Check it out. We're happy to help you. But Lillie, this is tremendous. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to help us educate everyone on what this is all about.
I'm always happy to be a nerd about this. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you like this kind of content, there's plenty more. Go to salesforceforrecruiters.com. If you got any questions or any topics that you want us to cover, email me directly. It's hello@bradowens.com. That's hello@bradowens.com. And then salesforceforrecruiters.com if you want more info like this. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.